BroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And welcome back, folks, for hour number 2. This is America's Web Radio, and you are listening to On Point with Victor. I am Victor Armendariz. Look, I've got some guests this hour, and we'll get right to it. I do have a few more things that I'm going to say because, you can't shut me up. But I wanted real quick to bring in Ryan real quick. You are with the Eugene U campaign, and he's running for District 7 for United States Congress. Just real quick, tell us a little bit about Eugene and why people should go out and vote for him in District 7. And if you're familiar, those of you out there in District 7, this was Rob Woodall's previous seat.
So Rob Woodall's retiring, so we're running for an open seat. Eugene is running as a Republican. I'm Ryan. I'm the communications director, so I handle all that social media, advertising, videos, all that stuff.
All the fun stuff.
Yeah, all the very fun because I'm good at that stuff. I'm young, and Eugene is running as a conservative Republican. So we're for a smaller government. Like we'll live the American dream without the government getting in the way. Cut these regulations that hurt small businesses most of all. And lower taxes as well. Probably you might even want to pass a balanced budget amendment or something like
that
along
would
those
be
lines.
something.
Yeah, and one idea we also want is some type of term limits, something like that, in order to stop these corrupt career politicians. Because Eugene is new to politics. He's not a career politician. He's not trying to make money off of this. He already has his own. He's set up.
What's his background?
His background is so he came here from Korea about I would say 50 years ago. When he was in around high school age. He moved to Augusta, Georgia, and so he's been in Georgia ever since. And he was a volunteer firefighter in high school, and then he went and served in Korea for the U.S. Army as a military policeman. So that was I think that's interesting for him reading his book, talking about the dynamics of Koreans don't trust him somewhat because he has the American flag on him, but the Americans don't trust him because he looks Korean. But he had to. So I think he's learned a lot of.
He had to navigate.
Yeah, a lot of disputes there.
Yeah, from his own side, and then his.
So
very interesting.
So when he came back to Georgia, he wanted to become a firefighter again, and but he had to wait, because of hiring cycles. So he saw the sheriff, and the sheriff said, "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., you're hired." So he was deputy sheriff in Richmond County for I think 6 or 7 years after that. So he has a lot of law enforcement experience. And then he was a salesman for the Cummins Engine Company, selling
the diesel company.
Yeah. I think he said his first sale was a huge amount of new diesel engines. He sold to some guys in Korea. They were like, "You're Korean, you go talk to them." And he said the commission on that one was more than his entire salary for the year. So he was like, "I like this."
Wow.
Yeah. So he did that for a while, and then Cummins Engine Company. I think it was Cummins Engine Company or some higher up company that might have merged with. They were gonna close down some plant in somewhere around Augusta or somewhere around Richmond County, that part of Georgia, East Georgia. They were gonna close down because they just didn't like it. It was I think it was selling refurbished military vehicles, stuff like Humvees, stuff like that, to our allies, not our enemies, obviously.
Right.
Other countries that we want to help. And Eugene was like, "Well, why don't I buy it?" So he and his wife bought it over, and they took it over and grew it to about 400 something employees, helping provide that many jobs. So now he wants to run for Congress because he's done everything else, and he wants to help out, and he's living the American dream. Came to this country, naturalized, and all that.
That's the way it should be. That's the great thing about this country, about how just like that, someone, and just like my father came here, and like Eugene came here, not only can they succeed, then they can actually get into government. I mean, show me another country that's it just doesn't work like it does here, and it's truly amazing. And well, that's a great story. Sounds like Eugene is I actually did see Eugene. He spoke at one of the rallies I spoke at, and I really liked a lot of what he said. And I hope that I'm not. I didn't get a chance to ask him, but I ask all candidates if they will get behind the fair tax.
Oh yeah,
or the consumption tax.
I mean, it was written by John Linder.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
obviously we're all for fair tax, which would obviously lower. We're trying to lower taxes on most people, trying to help out everyone with not having to worry about sending so much money to the IRS, and we're all for small government, and fair tax is a perfect example of that.
Oh, perfect. Well, folks, in case you couldn't guess, it is voting day here in Georgia, and so if you're out there, if you're in, let's see, District 7 is a lot of Gwinnett.
It's most of Gwinnett and most of Forsyth.
I
would say.
If you're out there, then you're going to want to give Eugene a look at. I'm not. I don't do too many. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. Let's put it that way. I will sometimes. But But get out there and give him a look, because we need somebody good in District 7. You know, Woodall almost lost that seat in 18.
Yeah.
And so we're going to need somebody who's not afraid to is not afraid to stand up for what's right. B, not afraid to stand up and say, hey, Trump's economy is awesome. What Trump's doing policy is great. You know, we need somebody who's not afraid to say it. And from what I remember from Eugene, I don't think he's going to be afraid to say it.
And hopefully we'll be able to get him on the show soon. And
yeah.
Juan here was helping us out with waving signs today, so
excellent. So perfect. That sounds good, Ryan. All right, thanks for stopping by. Definitely. So I want to get into a few things. We're going to get back on this a little bit on with what's going on today with what the Black Lives Matter movement has become. Because, folks, like I mentioned in the first hour, if you go look up their website, they have an agenda, and maybe some of the people out there are really protesting in the name of George Floyd to make things better. But a lot of this Black Lives movement is a political movement, and if you just go to their website, folks, don't take it from me. Go look it up and do your own research. Before you go running around and kowtowing to a Black Lives Matter mob, before you go kneel somewhere, go look up what they stand for. It's on their website. They even admit to wanting to dismantle what they call the Western nuclear family. Basically, what they're saying is they want to, in my opinion, do what the Democrat Party has already been doing for years, which is dismantle the black culture, dismantle the black family, and it's right there on Black Lives Matter. I mean, folks, they don't want families. They don't want a family unit. They don't want kids learning from their parents. They want a village, and I know you've heard that before, but they really do. They want to dismantle the whole family unit so that there's a massive mob. There's a group think. There's mob think. The parents shouldn't teach you. The leaders of the mob should teach you. Or the parents shouldn't teach the kids. The leaders of the mob should teach the kids. This is the kind of stuff that's going on there. So I'm not making this up, folks. You can go look it up and do your own reading. And since I mentioned the kneeling, let me say this real quick. Just let me be perfectly clear here. Those of you know I'm of Mexican Spanish descent, but I'm an American first. And never, ever, once, ever will I kneel for any man. If I'm going to kneel, it's going to be for the cross, or it's going to be for God Almighty himself. That's it. So if you're a part of the mob and you think you're going to come to one of my events where I'm speaking or somewhere and you think you're going to get me to kneel, you got another thing coming, because this red-blooded American doesn't kneel for any man, period. So now that I got that off my chest, I do want to. So I've got a guest here. Those of you who are watching live, you'll see over to my left. So, what's your Juan and your last name?
Bayona.
Bayona.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Juan, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but just so the listeners know, so not too long ago I did a speech at a rally, and you were there, and you were watching the speeches, and you came up to me afterwards, and you kind of related to me based on the story that I had. So introduce yourself, and let's get into a little bit of who Juan is.
So my name is Juan Bayona. I'm a freshman. Over by Forsyth County. I'm working with Eugene, also Joe Prophet for the 6th congressional district. So two campaigns.
I know Joe Prophet well.
Yeah, and then in November I'll be working for Miss Josie Cruz, but since she doesn't have a primary, so I'll get in touch with her in November. But I play football. I do wrestling and track, so plenty of sports. And I'm a very political person. And when you told your story, I did very much relate to it. And it kind of gave me an inspiration, because I like to see people living the American dream. And it kind of gives, and me being 15, it kind of gives me hope for, what I could achieve. And I know that's what I can achieve, because after all, this is America. And I've read plenty of books, like Andrew Carnegie, who was an Irish immigrant. He became the richest man in American history.
Why don't more 15-year-olds read that?
Yeah.
So you're 15 years old. What high school do you go to?
I go to Denmark High School.
Okay. So you're 15-year-old, normal teenager. How do you navigate being more of the conservative side? Because I know when I was in college many years ago, I experienced two different worlds. The left, the Democrats would always assume, because I'm Hispanic, they assumed that immediately that I was a Democrat and must be a liberal Democrat. Yeah. And when I would tell them I'm kind of independent, because even at that time in college, I wasn't so much conservative as I was independent-minded thinking. So for you, How do you navigate it right now? Because it's so crazy right now with the youth. You guys are being targeted by leftist groups everywhere. So how do you navigate going, being, are your friends conservative, or do they make fun of you, or?
I have a mixed group of friends. So I'm obviously friends with I don't discriminate. So I'm friends with just about anybody. I judge them by their character, not by the color of the skin.
Excellent.
So most of my friends that happen to be men are conservative, but most of the women who I happen to be friends with tend to align themselves like either center or left, and it's just the way it is. But I've had plenty of experiences where I've been sort of either discriminated or just because of my political affiliation. Like I've had for my 14th birthday, I got a pair of Trump socks, and I used to wear them a lot. And one day I decided to wear shorts with them into my social studies class, and my teacher, she looked at me funny, and she kind of questioned what I was doing. That she had this face of I had a third eye or something.
She probably looked at you as if, how dare you have that kind of opinion, or your own opinion.
Exactly. But I've also had teachers congratulate me on it, and teachers agree with me, and it kind of just gets mixed. And I've had students tell me, like, I've had my former peers tell me that I couldn't like Trump because I was Latino, and that
because you're Latino.
Yeah, and that he was a racist, and that that kind of stuff. And I had for example, at the rally, if you remember the big RV with the big Trump, I took a picture of it. I didn't post it on my Instagram. My friend Sam did, and he tagged me on it, and people screenshotted it, posted it on Snapchat, made fun of us. They called us annoying, and I even had I had a kid in my grade tell me that I was annoying, and then I had a girl in the grade below me tell me that I was uneducated. And now I know my facts. I follow plenty of accounts on Instagram. I keep updated with the news. I read Charlie Kirk and Shapiro, all of it. I read their books. I watch their videos. PragerU, all of it. So I know my facts. And the idea that somebody could think that I was uneducated simply because of my political views, and I couldn't stand that.
Not just your political views, because you had the audacity to disagree with them.
Yeah.
And for somebody to come up and tell you that you're uneducated when it's probably quite the opposite. You know what? I love it, because I get the feeling that you probably don't get mad, that you probably just say, hey, if you want to dispute my facts, bring any debate to me. And I will give you this bit of advice. If they start calling names or stuff, just walk away and say, when you're ready to talk civilized and be educated, then come sit down with you. Because you're probably, if you haven't already, you're going to be called all kinds of things. Just because you have the audacity to not only be Latino and a Trump supporter, but just to have your own thoughts and your own views, and you've done your research, and you've done. What made you, let me put it this way, as a 15-year-old kid, because we don't see this a lot, we don't see it enough, what got you interested in politics?
What got me interested in politics? So from a very young start, my grandfather, I was born in Colombia. I'm a native born Colombian, but an American first. He was an army engineer, and he ran for office. He didn't win.
Wow.
So, and my dad, we're from a very political family. My dad's side is very right wing. So I was raised that way. But when we first moved here, my dad, he couldn't vote at first, but he considered himself a Democrat because he watched the news, and he used to work. He used to work for LA, and so he used to rub elbows with people, and he used to people told him, you have to elect Democrats because that's what they align with. And he's a strong Catholic regardless. My family, we're strong Catholics, and he eventually came to the realization and he in the Bible, we conservatives, we mostly disagree with same-sex marriage, and that's an issue. And my dad kind of realized, he said, so I'm a Catholic, but I don't think it makes sense for me to identify with the party that wants to destroy the church, wants to make abortion completely legal, and 100% supports same-sex marriage. So he switched. Wow. And I think it's one of the best decisions he's ever made. I've never faced discrimination from a Republican in of itself. I used to play football over in the north. My practices look like an episode of Duck Dynasty. And I never once faced an inch of discrimination. Wow. Never once from anybody. And I've gone to plenty of Republican rallies that have felt intimidating at first, because you see the stereotype, it's like white people, everyone, you think, oh, goodness, I'm going to get discriminated against, I'm going to get looked at funny. Yeah. And I haven't been welcomed with anything than open arms.
Yeah.
But what made me Republican? It was definitely my dad. It was definitely my friend Sam, because we built an interest first on history, and then economics, and eventually politics. And I realized, when Trump first ran, I was like, he's a racist. CNN, all my peers, all my teachers, that's what they all saw, and that's what I saw. But then eventually I grew, and I kind of just realized that's what I align with. That's what my family aligns with. That's what my values are.
Well, I tell people all the time, you don't have to like Trump the person, but you can't deny his policies.
Yeah.
And if your goal is to truly help the most Americans you can, the help the American people, if your goal is to help poor people, then policy ought to matter first. Donald Trump has done more, through his policies, has done more for the black culture and the black movement, or the black lives, let's say, than any president before him. Including and I can include Hispanics in there. When policies open up the door for Hispanics like yourself, your father, your grandfather, my father, me, when the doors are open for us to go reach out and get it, if we're just willing to put the sweat equity to the ground, no Democrat could stop us, or no Republican could stop us. And that's the lesson that I learned from my father. It sounds like that's the lesson you've learned from yours. And for me, it's not always about being Republican, because there's an establishment side to the Republican Party. So you'll hear me refer a lot of the times to, I'm a conservative, Constitution, independent-minded, freedom-loving, liberty-loving person. Does that mean I vote Republican pretty much all the time? Yep. But it also means I'll vote Libertarian when I can, if I don't see the right person, because I do believe, you said it before, judge people by their character.
Yeah.
And that's what we ought to do with all politicians. But I mean, it's great, because I'm seeing a lot in you that I saw, when I grew up. Because I did the same. I grew up pretty much here in Georgia, and different areas of the South, and I was always in different, whether it be an event, a sporting event, or something like that. I never really experienced any kind of systemic racism, and nothing like that. And I love that I'm hearing that from you. And one of my questions to you was going to be, have you been to other Trump rallies, type rallies, or Republican rallies? And if you have, did you ever once have a Republican or a so-called Republican come up to you and say, "What are you doing here?" or give you a hard time?
Now, I wasn't able to make it to the official Trump rally in Georgia when he was running in 2016. I will very hopefully go this year.
Right.
But the closest I ever got to Trump was when he came for one of the official Blexit meetings. You'll remember that traffic was really bad in Atlanta because Trump was in town.
Yeah.
And I went to Dobbins Air Force Base. I dressed my best, and I greeted him. I was 5 feet away from Governor Kemp. Governor Kemp. Yeah. And I just waved at him. He kind of just waving at us. I took pictures, but not once did I have a bad interaction. Like, there were military members. There was a lot more minorities at that event than I thought. There was a guy dressed in his trench coat, and I think we were in the bathroom, and we just kind of joked a little bit. Because I kind of complimented his outfit, he complimented mine. But that was a very positive experience. I didn't have anybody look at me funny. I didn't have anybody look at me weird. I've never faced any discrimination from anybody, and no systematic racism. I'm just as bright as the next kid in line.
Exactly, and you know that, and you've got that confidence.
Yeah.
And and the thing about it is, like you said, and like I say all the time, I'm an American first. An American doesn't mean what skin color you are. An American is, do you hold the ideals of the United States, which are freedom, liberty, independence. That's what we stand for. And as Americans, I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, brown, whatever. If you have those ideals, what a great place this is to be. And even for the ones who want to cause trouble, you know what? They're protected by the Constitution as long as they do it peacefully. There's no other country that has a document that restricts government, and that's what we have, and that's what makes there is something to American exceptionalism, and you're speaking to it, even just from your experiences, and you're only 15, and that to me speaks volumes of this country. And it pains me when I see, I've got Latino friends who they're so married to the letter D, and they're so convinced that Trump is, and honestly, if it wasn't Trump, no matter what Republican it is, they're going to feel the same way. In fact, I will predict to you right now, after Trump's next 4 years, whether it's Nikki Haley or Mike Pence, no matter who the Republican is, it could be Condoleezza Rice, and who they're going to get the same treatment that Trump got. That is today's Democrat Party. They don't want to be in an arena of ideas. They want to be in, we have power, you don't, you shut up, you go home. That's the world that we live in. But because of people like you who aren't afraid to say, hey, look, I can stand up for freedom. I can stand up for liberty, and I'm not afraid. That's awesome. And the fact that you're going, see, I had the same experience. Whenever I go to a Trump rally or anything like that, I am welcomed with absolute open arms. I've never had anyone turn to me and go, you're brown, you should be over in the other camp. Never. But I have been to Democrat events where they look at me and go, how dare you come here if you don't agree with us? And they want to shut me out. Yeah. And so what I would tell you, one, is when your friends, if you have friends that start to give you a hard time, then just put it back on them. Ask them, why are they so close-minded? Aren't they supposed to be the party of open-mindedness? Yeah. So I would tell you to tell them that. But I also think, one, it's great because you mentioned before, when Trump came on the scene, you were told, everybody was telling you he was racist. And I got the same thing. And for me, I went right back at him and said, well, where's your evidence? Because if and this is something you might want to tell your friends, if you look at Donald Trump before he ran for president, he was loved by the media. He was adored by the Hollywood crowd because he was a New York Democrat. He had to play ball with the Democrats because that's who runs the city. And they loved him then. But all he did was run and had the audacity to say, I want to make America great again. I want to create the environment to where everyone can have a job. And he did it. And he said, I want to bring manufacturing back. And he did it. But yet the Democrats call that racist. So maybe in some of your debates or anything, ask people, well, tell them to define racism. Because I bet they can't do it. And then they will always cite, oh, well, he said all Mexicans are bad. He never said all Mexicans are bad. Yeah, he talked about a bad element. Yeah, and then maybe they'll bring in Charleston saying, there's fine people on both sides, but he was really not referring to that. To take it out of context, he was referring to the statue debate where we have like great American heroes like Robert E. Lee, who himself even didn't want to fight in the Confederacy, but found himself having to because he was a Virginian, and he because back then the South put their states first. Well, you are very well read, I can tell, and there's nothing better than somebody who knows the history of this country. And one, the point you just made is a point that I've tried to get across. When you look, and just the other day, I think it was in Minneapolis where they tore down a Robert, or it may have been Virginia. Oh, I'm sorry, it was in Virginia because the governor came out, blackface governor, who apparently he can get away with wearing blackface, and also wants to kill babies when they're born, but that's a whole nother topic. But this governor put through or wrote an executive order or who knows what to pull down a statue of Robert E. Lee. And you put it better than probably any liberal could even dream of because you understand history. Robert E. Lee wasn't about slavery. Robert E. Lee was about, I'm an American and I'm a Virginian. Because you are correct. If you look back in the early days of this country, it meant something to have statehood. And you were an American. We could all stand together as Americans, but we would all stand for our states. And Robert E. Lee was a Virginian, and the guy was a good leader. He really was, and he was a good strategist. And he took the road that he had to take, even though if you read enough in the history, he didn't want to fight for slavery, because what a lot of people don't understand is the Civil War wasn't fought just for slavery. Yeah. There was a lot more. Really, the big war was to keep this country together, and everybody wants to frame it as, oh, it was slavery. It was the people who wanted slavery against the people who didn't want slavery, and that's not exactly true. In fact, if you really do your research, which you probably already have, there were northern slave owners just as there were southern slave owners. The difference was the northern elitist would create, for lack of a better term, elitism within their slavery, and it's very strange. But it's one of those things where I tell people all the time to go do research, and that's one thing that they should do, because there's a lot more to the Civil War, and to tear down these statues. See, as a Hispanic or brown guy or minority, I don't have a problem with. We should never forget history, Juan, because what happens if we forget and not learn from history? You're doomed to repeat it. You're doomed to repeat it. And we can't, unfortunately, we're seeing that unfold now. We're seeing a movement now that's turned into a mob movement where they want to defund police officers. What are they going to do? One, let's say your house, you live with your parents, And let's say somebody breaks into your house. Who do they expect you to call after they take away your Second Amendment? So you see how the liberals work. But Juan, this is awesome. So tell me, what do you want to do going forward, or what kind of impact do you want to have on not just your community, but let's say on the whole?
So, I mean, I'm really interested in politics, so I'll keep working on Eugene's campaign and a lot of campaigns from here going forward. As of at least for my community, I plan. Community service seems like a great ideal. Mm-hmm. I'm also working on the Trump election campaign, so I make phone calls, almost daily. And for my community, my high school, there's student chapters for conservatives. Like there's TPUSA, and there's also YAF, which is for high schoolers more than anything. And I plan on opening one of those for my high school if it's not open by next year, so that I can help young conservatives find themselves and make people that they're kind of on the fence, maybe realize that they're conservative, not conservative, and it's just I'm trying to help people not be as closed-minded.
Awesome.
Like I have kids. I had a kid put on his social media. He said, "Unadd me or unfriend me if you're a Republican or a Trump supporter," and I kind of said, "When did we become so closed-minded?"
Well, you know what? Hold that thought, because I want to get into a little bit about closed-mindedness when we get back from this break. So stay tuned. You're listening to America's Web Radio. This is On Point with Victor.
Whether cruising the strip in a 57 Chevy or taking the family on a vacation in a 71 Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser, you need to tune in to Classic Cars with Steve Ronaldo and Jim Weber every Saturday from 8 to 9 a.m. on americaswebradio.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mike Karuchak. Have you ever wondered what doctors talk about amongst themselves? If you do, join us on the Doctor's Lounge and hear the doctors' conversations amongst themselves. Join me and my co-host, Dr. Hal Schertz, every Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m.
My name is Kyle Hayes, a motorsports student at Alfred State College. Every year, Alfred State students compete in the Great Race, which is a cross-country time endurance rally for vintage vehicles. As you can imagine, it's pretty costly. I'm asking for your help. Your donation can make it possible for these students to live their passion and promote the vintage automobile industry. Please visit our site at give.alfredstate.edu and search Great Race to learn more and help us reach our goal. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Steve Ronaldo, host of the Classic Car Show on America's Web Radio, talking to you about antique car insurance. In this hobby that I've been part of for years, not all insurance companies and insurance coverage is the same. I would suggest that you call J.C. Taylor or visit jctaylor.com to find out some information about some of the best antique car insurance you can get, such as agreed value. Insurance for your classic car. Again, when you get ready to insure your classic, antique, or even your street rod, call J.C. Taylor Insurance or visit jctaylor.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the americasbroadcastnetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And welcome back. Sorry, folks, it's live radio, and sometimes I get occupied. Actually, I'm getting such good response from you guys. I love you listeners. I can't tell you enough. And in fact, one, we've got some great listeners down in Daytona, and they've sent me a message already saying that they're about ready to vote for you. So, hey, speaking of which, do you have any aspirations to run down the road for office?
Yeah, I'm just want to send out my military career, and I established a name for myself in business. Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
That's the plan.
So you're. Oh, that is great. All three of my nephews are National Guardsmen. So, excellent. All right. Okay, so I've got one here, so we're going to keep one here throughout the rest of the show. But also on the phone right now on this election day, probably calling me from some intersection somewhere, Harold Dennis. Are you on the line?
Hey, Victor. How are you, sir?
Hey, good, Harold. I'm so glad you were able to call in. So I got a couple of things. So first of all, folks, if you're out there and you're in DeKalb County, Harold Dennis is running for sheriff for DeKalb County, and that voting is going on today. So get out there and vote and pull that lever for Harold Dennis. Harold, what's your message right now to those voters going to the polls?
My message for the voters going to the polls right now is wear something cool, carry an umbrella because it is hot, and be prepared to stand in long, long lines in DeKalb County. They've had quite some technical difficulties this morning with the voting machines. So the lines are long, it is hot, and very humid. And please hydrate and take water with you. It's going to be a long wait. The one precinct that I'm at Rita Inn Elementary School, the voters are saying it's taking them 3.5 hours just to vote.
Wow. Well, boy, I hope that all of them are there on behalf of Harold Dennis.
I hope so.
Well,
hope they get great news this evening after 7 o'clock after the polls close, saying that there is the new sheriff in town, and it's Harold Dennis going to be the new sheriff in DeKalb County.
And never have we needed a new sheriff more for DeKalb County. And folks, you guys out there that are listening, because Harold, we've got listeners all over the country, and let me clue them in real quick in case they haven't figured out. Harold Dennis is a black man, and he is running for sheriff, and it should be nonpartisan, which I should say, because, as a sheriff, Harold, you're going to treat Democrats and Republicans the same, are you not?
Yes. So, should I win, I will make history in DeKalb County by being the first Republican sheriff ever elected in DeKalb County.
Wow.
So I'm looking to not just make history, but to do great things in DeKalb County, building economic development, economic growth in the county, making the county safe, starting programs for the youth to get them out of gangs and productive citizens back in society, back in DeKalb County.
Well, that's great to hear. And one thing that I've always liked about you, Harold, is the platform that you create. I think people just don't realize the effects that a sheriff can have on a community. People just think law enforcement, but your platform is so awesome to me because you really give thought to how we can help the youth. In fact, I have Juan sitting in with me, who is a guest today. He's 15 years old and he's conservative, and we've been talking about, he's from Colombia, and we're talking about how being Hispanic and being conservative, we get a lot of pushback. And Harold, I know you've gotten pushback, and again, you said yourself, you'll make history by being the first black Republican elected sheriff for DeKalb County, and I hope that happens, because these are the roads that we need to pave for the future. Oh, Harold, you there?
Yes, can you hear me, Victor?
Oh, I got you now. So Harold,
sir.
I do want to get your opinion on something, because your background, you have a lot of background in law enforcement, and what's going on right now with cities and Democrats calling for defunding of the police in cities. Harold, give me your opinion on what do you see? What could be a effect if we were to defund police departments?
It's funny that you say that about the defunding of the police. I was having a great conversation just out here at the precinct as one of the constituents. I was walking over, and they came over to speak to me, asking me about the defunding of the police. I think personally, and also from a law enforcement background, and that defunding the police would be a horrible, horrible thing to do, because that means you will have no police protecting the citizens of the county. Yes, that service would now fall on the sheriff, but if you're defunding, first of all, the law enforcement officers of today are already underpaid, being in the profession that they're in, and so that's first and foremost. But please don't let a few bad apples spoil it for the whole bunch of apples who are out there. They put their lives on the line every day to save citizens and protect the citizens of the counties in which they serve. So defunding the police department would be a horrible thing. I really think that you just should have a great background in recruiting and continue to do investigations on your officers and send them for a yearly mental evaluation, as opposed to defunding a whole police department or county sheriff's office.
Well, Harold, you said it best. We don't need to descend into complete chaos because of a few bad apples. I mean, Harold, there are millions of police officers across this country, and I venture to say that 98% of them or 99% of them are good people. Daryl's on the ground. I mean, Harold's on the ground there. But Harold, if we move to defund, who are people going to call? And I think that's the question that people need to ask Democrats. Who do they think is going to police the streets or respond to robberies or things like that? I mean, Harold, what would your answer be to that?
Well, my answer to that is if anyone ever seen the movie The Purge, just think about that. If you haven't seen it, go out and you can see it. I think it's on YouTube now. But if you just look at that movie, what do you think this society would be without a lawless society? Just everyone taking the law in their own hands. I mean, when someone does something to you and a 911 operator just tell you, oh, just pray about it. Hopefully it'll work itself out. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work. So defunding the police department would be a horrible thing and a terrible thing to do. And I'm totally against defunding the police. It's about training, right, and having a great background and investigations unit to investigate these few bad apples.
You know, one thing that's awesome too, Harold, about you and your campaign is you often talk about what training means, and you go beyond that. I'm pretty sure I've heard you call for extra training as well as mental evaluation so that you can weed out bad apples.
Right.
Well, see, that's the kind of...
We definitely need to weed out the bad apples and just make certain that you have a great, like I said, background investigation unit, one for the new incoming officers. Make sure you have a great internal affairs unit to investigate any and every allegation that comes into the police department, and also having the citizen review board, have them activated as well to work alongside with your top-level staff to investigate these complaints that come in from the community. So that way you get the community involved working with the sheriff's office or any police department for that matter.
Absolutely. And that's just another reason why we're going to have to elect Harold Dennis today. But Harold, I wanted to ask you something else. As we see what's happening now, the mobs that are out there and the people that are calling for defunding the police departments, and they're using. I hate the fact that they're trying to create racial division because they're trying to use a say Black Lives Matter movement to get to defund police and to get to a lawless society. Harold, just this Sunday in Chicago, an 18-year-old young black man was shot and killed, and his girlfriend in the car with him was also shot, and she survived. How come there's no outcry for this young man? And I'll go beyond that.
Okay, you were breaking. One more time, sir.
Oh, sorry
I heard about the Black Lives Matter.
So, and bear with us, folks, because we're on a cell phone, and Harold's out campaigning, so or at least out cheering for the voters. What I was saying, Harold, is we have the city of Chicago, where on Sunday an 18-year-old black man was shot and killed in his car, and his girlfriend was shot also. She survived, but the 18-year-old young black man was shot in the head. Where's the outcry for him? So this is my problem with the so-called Black Lives Movement. If all lives matter, which they should, where is the outcry for the violence that's going on in Chicago? I think we're having a bad connection with Harold. Harold, can you hear me? I think we've got a bad one there. So let me go back to Juan here. So Juan, when you see something that's going on in Chicago, like's going on, you're 15. You know, this guy was 3 years older than you, and was just sitting in his car and was shot in the head. So when you see things like that's going on in Chicago, and there's no outcry, there's no march going on in his name or anything like that, So what do you think when there's a movement like this that's going on, trying to convince you that you need to kneel in front of them when they're not? I guess what I'm asking is, do you think they're really for all lives matter, and why shouldn't we be?
I think what they're fighting for is the systematic. I mean, if you viewers can't see my quotation marks, but it's the systematic oppression of
systematic, right?
Of colored people, and they're people being killed by cops, and that's 100%, a travesty that does happen. But again, all lives matter. Black lives do matter.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just you can't fight for an area and leave the other one untouched. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
exactly.
When it comes to gang violence such as Chicago, it's the taking out of religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's the destruction of the nuclear family.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, I mean, Chicago and Houston, I think, have the same exact populations. But the gun ownership in Houston is a lot higher because people are just Christian there.
Mm-hmm.
They're the families matter. Fathers don't bail out on their kids when they get a girl pregnant.
Right.
Right. People carry in Texas. That's what Texas is famous for. But Chicago, you carry, but it's just not necessarily the same value.
Well, Chicago has some of the most stringent gun laws,
Yeah.
anti-gun laws, let's just say. So if you are in Chicago, and that mayor there is just an absolute, I'm going to be nice and I'm not even going to say what I want to say, but if you're a citizen of Chicago, you have no right to protect yourself. They make it very hard for innocent Americans to protect themselves, even though there's a Second Amendment that gives them that right. But instead they want to take it away from them, but they don't want to do anything about the crime, the criminals. The criminal isn't going to care if there's a gun law. It's never going to stop them. And what we're seeing in Chicago, there were 85 people shot on the weekend of May 31st. 85 people shot. And these are black people that are being shot, and it's black on black crime, or wherever you want to phrase it. And I don't see the movement to go and say, hey, we need to do something about these deaths in Chicago. So this is my problem with the mob that's going on now, because if you're going to tell me that I need to defund a police department, then you better tell me why aren't you taking up for the innocent young black lives that are being lost every weekend in Chicago. And I'm not sure if we got Harold, are you still there, or did you make it back on?
Yes. Can you hear me, sir?
Oh, I got you now, Harold. Perfect.
Okay.
So, Harold, what I was getting to was the fact that there's so much violence in Chicago, and yet there's not an outcry from Black Lives Matter. There's no march going on in Chicago demanding that they rid Chicago of all the crime. In May 31st, there were 85 shootings in Chicago. And just Sunday, an 18-year-old young black man was shot in the head and killed. So, Harold, from your point of view, how can Chicago, how can they do better, and what should they do different?
Well, first of all, I guess with the Black Lives Matter, you can't pick and choose what battles you're going to battle or fight. If you stand for equality for everyone, then when anything like this happens, then you need to be able to be there to speak out for all the cases, not just for one particular case. And I'm not doubting any case, because if we look at it, Victor, just right here in our own part of DeKalb County, look at Anthony Hill, the military veteran with PTSD, who was completely naked. He had no weapon. He was just walking.
Right.
And the officer shot and killed him in the back. So you can't just pick and choose which battles you want to fight. You have to fight for everyone.
Right.
But as far as the violence, the black-on-black crime has to stop. Chicago is notorious for black-on-black crime, and we need to get with the superintendent of the police department of the Chicago PD and sit down, and it's not just for the superintendent. We also need to reach out to our local leaders, our pastors, our churches in these areas to get the local leaders involved. It takes a community to raise a child, but it also takes a community to help police the community.
Well, that's absolutely right. Harold, man, thank you so much for calling in. We're getting to the end of this segment here. Listen, good luck. Keep doing what you're doing, and I'm really looking forward to being able to tomorrow to call you and say, congratulations, Sheriff Harold Dennis.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Definitely keep me in your prayers, and I look forward to being the new sheriff of DeKalb County and also having Victor Armendariz to come out and to work with me, because if I'm going to do a great job in the county, I'm going to need some great people such as yourself to come along with me to help change DeKalb County and its culture.
You are too kind, and it would be my honor. So thanks again so much, people. Everyone go out there and vote for Harold, and we're going to be right back after these messages. You're listening to America's Web Radio.
Want to give your family or loved one the perfect gift? Then go online and check out the TornadoBodyDryer.com. I love mine and the warm heat air massage it gives me after my shower. The Tornado Body Dryer is super. You'll love it, and you'll love having one in your shower.
It hit those older elderly.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. They're doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction, can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Karuchak. Join me and my co-host, Dr. Hal Schurz, as we talk about the topics that doctors talk about amongst themselves, such as Medicare, Obamacare, alternative forms of care, and health information technology. Join us every Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back, folks. It's been fun today. It's been a good show today, and I hope all you guys have enjoyed this, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to Harold Dennis as he's out on the campaign trail. It's really neat today, being election day. Look, according to Michigan and Illinois and some Minneapolis, according to those states and cities, COVID-19 has been cured. There must be a vaccine that I didn't hear about, because now you can go march in the streets, no social distancing required. Let me mention this while I'm on it. If you're having trouble distinguishing between Democrats, Republicans, or conservatives, or if you just want to frame it in right-left, let me remind you of this. And one, you can pipe in if something strikes you. We just went through a few months, even still going on today in Michigan and Illinois and in New Jersey and New York. We've got Democrat governors, Democrat mayors who sent out the police. Now, 10 seconds ago, they were sending the police out to arrest business owners, to arrest people who wanted to go to the gym. They were arresting people who wanted to go worship. 10 seconds ago, these Democrats were using the police department to go and arrest people. There's no law on the books to enforce social distancing. There's no law on the book to enforce mask wearing. There is a thing called the Constitution that allows you to worship and work, but yet these Democrats 10 seconds ago were sending out the police force and making the police arrest people for going to work or trying to go to work or trying to work out or open a business or go to church. Now today, they want to defund the police. They want to blame the police, and they want to allow no social distancing for marchers and looters and pillagers and mobs. No social distancing. Not everybody had a mask on. So either COVID-19 has gotten real woke, or it's just vanished. Now understand this. You can't go to work. You can't go to the gym. You can't go worship. But you can go march in the street and call for the defunding of police departments. So somehow am I to believe that COVID-19, the Wuhan virus, somehow it just knows if the virus approaches me and goes, oh, no, wait, this guy's out here protesting, he wants to defund police, we'll leave him alone. But if I go to the gym, I'm going to get COVID-19. If I go worship, I'm going to get COVID-19. If I go open my business, I'm doomed with COVID-19. That is the mentality of your Democrat Party today. And folks, you don't have to take my word for it. You can see this. It's happening right in front of you today. You had the governor of Michigan demanding and arresting gym goers or people who open their business and all of these things, telling you can't go on the lake. Her husband can go on the lake, but you can't go get on the lake in a boat. You can't grow a garden. These are the restrictions that the Michigan governor felt like she had the power to tell you to do or not do. And then she goes and marches with no social distancing all weekend. So, as I've told you before, folks, what's good for the elitist is not good for you. The burdens that you must suffer will never be suffered by the elitist. Let me give you another example. These Democrats who are calling for the defunding of the police departments, do you think for 1 second that the Democrats who are calling for defunding of police will ever be without protection? No, folks. The Democrats will have protected class. They'll have their own police force. You won't, but they will. In fact, you can look this one up for yourself. Find me one Democrat who has called for the defunding of the Capitol Police. I haven't heard one. You'll hear crickets. Not one Democrat has come out and said, let's defund police departments and we'll start with the Capitol Police. They're not going to do that. You know why, folks? They don't want to do that because the Capitol Police protect their butts. And the elitist Democrats are better than you. They're more important than you see. So we'll leave the Capitol Police, but you there in your city, we'll defund your police. And look, make no mistake, folks, when the Democrats are talking about defunding the police across the states and cities, they're not saying they're going to get rid of all police. You've got to listen closely. What they want is a federal police department. They want to get rid of all the municipalities. They want to get rid of all the local cities. They want to get rid of all the state police. And they want to institute a federal police. Now, I can't tell you what a bad idea that is, folks. And if you want to see how a bad idea, go to Mexico. Mexico has a lot of federal police. And they've got a lot of problems with corruption. But see, what the Democrats want, the Democrats can't control the policing of states. They can't control municipality police departments. But if you get rid of them and you create a federal police department, then guess who's going to control it? The Democrat Party. You know, it wasn't that long ago when the Democrats used to rail and scream and throw themselves on the ground about the military. They don't do that anymore. You know why? Because they've been able to get their people, their generals, into the Pentagon. The left basically controls the Pentagon. So they don't have to rail and complain about the military anymore. And that's what they're trying to do with the police department. Don't doubt me, folks. Don't take my words lightly. The Democrats don't want to defund police and just leave the states with no police. They want a federal police department. You will hear some Democrats go, oh, Trump's a tyrant, Trump this, Trump's a Nazi. No, folks. The Democrat Party are using the tactics of the Nazis. They're using the tactics of Stalin, the tactics of Mao, the tactics of Marxism. In fact, the Black Lives, if you look, do yourself a favor and look up what the lady, there's 2 or 3 people who started the Black Lives movement. Look them up. They're Marxist. It's a Marxist movement. And with what they're trying to defund the police, this is another Marxist tyrannical move. Go back and look. You know, Juan, you can probably back me up. You know history. What did Stalin and Hitler and these tyrants, what do they have in common? they wanted full control of everybody.
Yeah,
right?
and one of the first things they all of them did was take away private gun ownership. And that's something that they all shared in common. What was the first things they did when they came into power?
Absolutely.
And it's just why it's necessary in America to maintain our freedom.
To maintain the Second Amendment. And why? And the reason they did that, one, is because exactly what these Democrats are doing now. If you can disarm the populace, and then you can disarm municipality police departments, then you can bring in a federal policing. And that means Washington would police your state. And that means bureaucratic Democrats would be making the calls and the shots. So how far are we, folks, from if you disagree with this, then you're going to be arrested. If you don't believe in climate change, our federal police can arrest you. You may be laughing at me right now, folks, if some of you are hearing me say that, but if you don't think that's where we're headed with this defunding of police, then you're not paying attention, and you don't know your history. Because there was a thing called Hitler, a man called Hitler, and a man Stalin, and these other despot leaders back in the day that all had federal-run police force. You look at Nazism, and you have the brown shirts. These were federally run policing. And folks, we don't want to go down that road. And you know why? Because we're Americans. We've got freedom, we've got liberty, we've got independence. That's how we were founded. That's how we need to stay. And folks, don't ever forget, you're in the greatest country. We are Americans. Thank you, Juan, for being here. And a big thank you to Harold Dennis again for calling in. And folks, stay tuned. We'll be back next week for another show. But keep remembering, we are Americans.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not,